here, the kids at the farm went to school with a lot of these guys in the girls in the class of 72. We spent a lot of time down at Pines Grocery, Deeker Drug Store, things like that. We had Faye Eichhorn, or Faye, let's see, Mildred Buck had a cafe on the other end of town. We go in there and play pinball and things like that. One of my experiences in Mildred is that I was sitting in there, I think it was Don Peterson and I, and there were some other guys there, but I can't remember who they were. And all of a sudden, Charlie Lyon walked in the door, pulled out a pistol, and shot Wallace Corey right there in front of us. I can see it from underneath that booth, I'll tell you that right now. And anyway, we were all standing there. Here comes Mildred running out with a rolling pin or a pot. I think it was a pan. She had a frying pan in her hand. And she comes running out there, and Charlie had hollered, "You've been with my wife," to Wallace. Well, we're under the table. Wallace is looking for a hole, and Mildred is coming out with a frying pan. Charlie, if you know Charlie Lyon, you know he played practical jokes on everybody. And he had a starter pistol. And rumor has it that several of his daughter's boyfriends met that starter pistol at the doorway. That was Charlie. Well, there were some characters in town. Another character that I had intimate experience with was the local Bud Barber. Most of you guys probably remember Bud. Well, when we were in junior high school, our fun was to try to get Bud to chase us. That was kind of what we tried to do. So one Saturday, it was somewhere around the 4th of July, I know it was Jim Lyon and I, and then he had a friend from South Dakota that was there as well. Maury somebody, you remember him? Maury Slot, that's right. Anyway, we're sitting on the corner, and we're in that empty lot just between the Standard Station and Rourke's, or Ridge Rourke's bar there. And we're shooting bottle rockets at his cop car. He always sat on the corner up by where the bank building used to be. He sat on that corner, and so we were shooting bottle rockets at him, trying to get him to chase us. But we figured it out an escape route, see? When he came down Main Street, we were going to shoot back down the alley and go into the houses back there and hide. It was real dark. There weren't no big streets in the alley. So we had this all figured out. But Bud had us figured out. So instead of going down Main Street, he shot back down and came down the alley. Well, that would have been okay as well, because we took off running, and there was a little cable fence. It was probably only 2 foot high. Remember, between the wooden posts, there's a fence that sat down there? Well, I don't know how they teach these kids in South Dakota. That's where Maury was from, South Dakota. But instead of jumping the fence, he decided to go underneath it and lift it up, just as I was jumping. Yeah, so I'm laying there on my back. I knocked the wind out of myself. I couldn't even breathe. And I'm just laying there thinking, he probably won't see me. It's dark out here, you know. I heard the car come to a stop. And it rolls up there, and I'm laying there thinking, he probably won't see me. And then all of a sudden, I have the spotlight hit me right in the eye. And he called me by my last name, McDermott. Get over here. So, oh, man. I knew I was in trouble. So I walked over there, and had told me to get in the car, so I got in the cop car, and I'm sitting there, and he said, "Who were you with?" I said, "Oh, just some kids from Correctionville." We were our buddies, right? Anyway, everybody knew the kids from Correctionville were trouble anyway. So anyway, he hauls me up to the city hall, and he walks me into City Hall, and he puts me in the jail cell, and he slammed the door and left. Well, I'm sitting there. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have been in prison. I tell you, time in a prison goes really slowly. You have a lot of time to think. So I was thinking about all the things that were going to happen to me when my folks found out, when I got home, and everything. And it took about, I suppose it seemed like 2 or 3 days, but it was probably about 10 minutes. And Bud came walking back in. He didn't say anything, and he just opened the jail cell, put me in the car, and took me home. He said, "Now you stay home." Well, I went in the front door, went out the back door, and went up to Jim Lyon's house to tell these guys everything that happened. But it was a lesson learned. It was a lesson learned. And Bud never did tell my folks. So if any of you guys see my mom, don't tell her. She still doesn't know. That was one of the experiences I had. We had also another thing we did was when we were in like junior high. You remember the midnight movies at Dixon's theater in town here? I mean, they would show movies like Dracula, Frankenstein. We were like junior high. I absolutely hated it. I was scared to death at all of those movies. But I sat by Carl Barrow all the time. And Carl could sit through anything. He was never afraid of anything. He'd sit up there. I was looking through my buttonhole jacket on my coat, you know, and hiding behind that. Carl would just sit up there like this all the time. So that was a negative experience, I'd say. I still don't like scary movies. We're gonna move on from there. Talk about, well, I guess one other thing. Shirley asked me to talk about what it was really like growing up in Anthon. What influenced me in my after I left here, what I did, and everything. So I'll touch on it slightly. I don't want to bore you, but when I was 16, Ed Umbaugh showed up at my house one Saturday morning and offered me a job at Pork's, and I delivered groceries. And I delivered it to a lot of the older ladies in town. And I'll never forget my first delivery to Mrs. Hines. She was a neighbor of mine up here. And I'm not sure who her cousin was or anything, but I always thought she was a really scary lady, you know. Every time we played, there was an empty lot right between her house and Cunningham's, who lived across the street from us. And we played in that empty lot a lot. And when the ball, it always went into her garden. And she had a really nice garden, and she didn't like us stepping on her plants, so she was always coming out and giving us heck. So I was kind of afraid of her. So one of my first deliveries when I was at Pork's was to her house, and I was like, oh gee, she's gonna get even with me for all these years I did that in the garden. But I went there the first time, and she didn't eat cinnamon rolls. So, you know, and that's what I found. A lot of the older ladies in town, when I go, I can't talk about it. When I go visit them, they would cook me cookies and all that stuff. So it was a learning lesson on how people are raised by their village and not just their town, so, or not their family. So. Okay, we're going to move on to something a little lighter here.
Across the street from
we're going to talk about the class of 62. One of the honor classes this year is 1962. And so what happened in 1960? I'm skipping Shirley. Sorry. Now I'm going to introduce right now. I'm going to introduce Shirley. No, I was the boss, the Godfather. Yeah. Sorry.